All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Uh, Really looking forward to this. And I have to give a little shout out to Will Underwood for the title we're putting on this year's presentation, Muddleness, March Muddleness. Usually it's March Madness, and we're coming up for something that would really fit the bill for this year, and that's muddleness. So thank you, Will. And as we look at this year and looking at, there's the Hall of Fame picture that I look about the same way as I did then. Anyway, looking at this year, we are playing basketball, and we're very, very grateful to be playing basketball. And as you look, last year we lost the tournament. This year, the tournament has been found, and it will be different than any other previous event. Both tournaments, men's and women's, will be at a single destination city. For the men, Indianapolis; for the women, San Antonio. So it's going to be a little different. And then you might say, okay, since we're still in the middle of pandemic, it hasn't gone and we're still battling that battle, why in the world are we having a March Madness in 2021? Let me tell you, it is primarily financial in scope, that the NCAA really comes to respect the tournament. That is your cash cow for the NCAA, the $1 billion TV contract. And as we move forward with the tournament, it can be really something very, very special this year. And it's a nice diversion, something for us to debate about, argue about, and move forward with excitement for this year's tournament. It yields about 900 and almost $1 billion, and 96% of that goes to the NCAA, and that's what they use to reimburse the 322 Division One institutions that are playing Division One basketball. And so about 60% of what comes into the NCAA is redistributed, and that is something special. And people think that the NCAA has lots of money. The NCAA does not have a lot of money. The NCAA receives nothing from football. The college football playoff is totally separate. And so the tournament is so essential to the NCAA to function as an NCAA, et cetera. And as we go forward and looking at the influences of this year's tournament, when you look at fewer games, cancellations, postponements, many conferences have just had a tremendous upheaval of a normal schedule. And I take my hat off to our committees, men's and women's, for the logistics for Indianapolis and San Antonio, housing for 68 teams, practicing in game sites, safety protocols, attendance. It's just a monster logistical event. And they have done a marvelous job pulling this together with various sites around Indianapolis, with Mackey at Purdue, Mackey Arena, Assembly Hall at Indiana, Hinkle Fieldhouse at Butler, and the Lucas Oil facility. On the women's side in San Antonio, they're using the conference center, they're using the Alamo Dome, they're also using San Antonio, Texas facilities, Austin facilities. So the logistical wherewithal that the committees have gone through is really something well done. I take my hat off to both committees. Then you look at as you move along and along with what is the influence of COVID, is that the NCAA has granted every student athlete one more year of eligibility. I think that's a great move. The NCAA also allows transfers at any time to anywhere without no permission by the institution, and also having a tournament throughout the year and seeing our games with no fans, it has been different. There's been pauses. The MAC tournament, Michigan was paused, Baylor was paused, men's and women's programs were paused. Baylor women were paused for about 3 weeks. And so these cancellations, postponements, confusion, playtime, promotion, etc., has become a different element. So as we look at how this committee, what are we going to do when a team has confronted COVID and cannot participate? So the NCAA committee has come up with what is a contingency plan. And for an AQ conference, that would be like the MAC tournament, the Sun Belt, et cetera, for the AQ conference. For example, in our conference, Ohio is our champion. They're going into the NCAA tournament. And if they cannot participate because of the COVID, the conference has selected a replacement, which in all likelihood would be the number 2 team, in our case, probably Toledo. So they would just take Ohio's place in the tournament. The at-large conference, it's a little more complicated. If an at-large conference like the ACC, the Big Ten, if one of their teams cannot participate, the conference had to inform the committee that this team cannot participate, and they have until 6:30 the night before the first game, and then they predetermine how they're going to select their replacement, and they've come up with replacement teams on the one side for this would be someone like Louisville, somebody like or Colorado State that would take their place. They were one of the 2 teams last in. So that's how they would move forward. Now, as we go forward with the tournament and looking at what I would call more madness, more muddleness, when you look at what has happened with the conference tournaments, you see what I call bid stealers, like Georgetown, who was 8th in the Big East. They won their championship, so that steals a bid. You take the Oregon State, won the Pac-12, and they were ranked number 12 at the beginning of the year. They come on and won their tournament. So that knocks out really good teams like Wichita State, Colorado State, St. Louis, Ole Miss. It knocks those teams out of the opportunity to pick up a bid. So you look at the other thing with this, what I would call the more muddleness, is the conference tournaments. They're grinders. You take the Big Ten tournament, for example, where you had teams that had COVID had to withdraw from the tournament, go home, and hopefully get ready for the NCAA tournament and or not be ready for the NCAA tournament. Then you have teams like Duke, who withdraws from the ACC, does not participate, and have since, subsequent to that, have withdrawn from the NCAA tournament. And then on the women's side, you have the same situation. No team on the women's side has come up to the point where they will not be able to participate, but they have a wonderful tournament coming up. And you look at the women's tournament. I look at the women's tournament as what I would call a purer tournament than the men's, in that they have more experienced teams at the top level of their bracket, and they have some outstanding teams that are going to go on and take their position in the tournament. And then as you look across the board of college athletics, there's some issues. You say to yourself, and you say, why is this team even playing? And I use as an example here, Kansas. They're involved in several major NCAA infractions. They've spent millions of dollars in defense attorneys. You look at University of North Carolina, who have academic issues, where they've been accused of some sexist, racist issues, but they're all playing. And so what we have is what's in front of us is what we do with our bracket. But from time to time, I look at this and say, why is it at the NCAA, and why are presidents and athletic directors not taking a more firm stand on that? At times, I feel that they all need what I would call a very strict case in ethics. All right, now as we look at the going forward and getting ready for looking at the bracket, you first thing that comes to mind is that several of the blue bloods are not in the tournament. You can take a look at Duke. they're not in the tournament. You can take a look at North Carolina, they're falling back. So several of the blue bloods have fallen back and are no longer the preeminent teams that you're looking at the top of your bracket, because it's just been a different kind of season. And some of those teams that are usually pretty good NCAA teams, they've fallen back. And so that's not going to be the thing we've had in the past. Like Kentucky's not in. What's an NCAA tournament without Duke and Kentucky? Well, for one, it's going to be a great tournament. Now, getting to the point of some tips, and when you're looking at your bracket, have at least one number one seed in the Elite Eight. And 29 of the last 33 years, a 1, 2, or 3 seed has won it all. A number 5 seed has never won it all. No team seeded 9 or lower has ever won it all. So you take a look at the bracket and you're going down through and you're trying to figure out where are the upsets. And it's going to be what I consider a wild selection this year, like we've never had before, because the bracket, in my opinion, is top heavy. We have some great teams at the top and a lot of equal teams in the mid and the lower seeds. Also, take a look at the conference tournament champions aren't a sure thing in the NCAA tournament. You take, again, the Big Ten tournament, that's a grinder. You take the MAC tournament, that's a grinder. And you go through and win that tournament, what do you have left to move forward in the NCAA tournament? One of the things that if I were in charge of the NCAA for a day, or the committee for a day, I would want all tournament champions to be done at least 1 week before Selection Sunday. Having been in the committee room and looking at that Sunday, you've got championship teams being selected by several conferences, and that's a tremendous tension on the committee to have that done and announced by 6 p.m. And the game maybe in some cases just ended at 5:30. So that's one thing I would like to see changed. So another thing, a team's head coach getting into some other things that you should really write down and take advantage of this tip. A team's head coach with a beard has never won it all. So that's something to keep in mind. And contrary to the past, the Big Ten has had the most top teams this year. I think the Big Ten has been a strong conference this year. The Big 12 is a strong conference. The ACC, the Big Ten has 9 teams in the tournament. And you look at the ACC has 7, the Pac-12 has 7, the ACC has 4. And so it's a little different setup. Mid-majors tend to have more experienced players and give number one and done teams trouble in the tournament. You look at Winthrop. Winthrop's a dangerous mid-level team. They are an excellent team. I feel that they could move along in the tournament. Liberty is very good. I like Ohio. Ohio dismantled the MAC tournament this year with basically one outstanding player by the name of Pleasant. He's just unbelievable. And so I put Ohio in the realm of coming through with a major upset. No coach over 70 years old has ever won it all. We have a couple opportunities for that this year with Leonard Hamilton at Florida State, Jim Boeheim at Syracuse. And over the past 35 years, there's been an average of 25 upsets per tournament. And I would suggest that you have at least 16, because when you look at upsets, they determine who's going to have the winning bracket. And an upset is where a team who is seated 2 lines below you upsets you. That's an upset. So a 9-8, that's not an upset. A 1-2, that's an upset. Like a 10-7, that's an upset. And my favorite upset of all time back in 2001, we're a 13 in the tournament playing a number 2 team, Indiana, and we defeated them. We had several upsets in 2002. We were a 10, rated 10, and we beat a 7, Oklahoma State, a 10 over 2 in Alabama, a 10 over 3, Pittsburgh. So those have to go down as my favorite all-time upsets. But upsets are part of the deal and will continue to be part of a successful bracket. Some more tips that are very important. Picking double-digit teams is smart until it's not smart. And it's smart in the beginning. After the second round, it no longer is smart. So you need to go, and usually the number 1 seed usually make it to the Elite Eight. Not always, but sometimes. Blue is still the color of champions. And when you look at projected teams that are going to win the tournament, you can see that there's a possibility for that to remain. So look at your Blues. Dressing to the nines, now a sign of the past. And when you look at how our coaches are dressed for the games this year, most of them look like they just walked out of practice onto the game floor. And I think that's something that, unfortunately, some of the past. I get my all-time favorite how a coach should be dressed for Cleveland State's coach in Dennis Gates. I just think he was dressed to win, and the team played to win. And I think it's a little thing, but it's important to me. All right, now as we get into the MAC champions, this year on the women's side is Central Michigan, and they are, I think they should be ranked higher, but they're 13 and they get to play Iowa. On the men's side is Ohio. They're an excellent team moving forward who came on hot towards the end of the year. Their star player recovered from a serious injury earlier in the year. He's now playing. And is he playing? And I have picked Ohio to knock off Virginia this year, which you might throw up your hand and say, you are crazy. No, I'll tell you why here in a minute. So as we look at the seeds and on your bracket, let's look at the West seed first. And very quickly, I'll go through and show you where I think there will be some upsets that will be worthy of note. And Gonzaga will win. And I look at Ohio to knock off Virginia. Here is why. Virginia have dealt with COVID all year. They had to withdraw from their conference tournament, and they're still dealing with COVID. And I'd like to know who has COVID and who cannot travel to Indianapolis. So I picked that as an upset. And then you look at we go to the south. Baylor's going to move forward. Wisconsin's going to knock off North Carolina. In my opinion, I think Wisconsin will be a stronger NCAA team than they were in the Big Ten. Villanova are hurt, and I think Winthrop will defeat Villanova. Villanova's star player, Gillespie, is hurt, will not be able to play. Purdue will advance. Texas Tech will knock off Utah State. That's not an upset, so they will move forward. Arkansas will defeat Colgate. Colgate's an interesting team. They should play basketball on roller skates. They just run and shoot. When you watch that team play, you think, how in the world do they keep the basketballs in the gym? They just shoot, shoot, shoot. Texas Tech is going to be one of my Cinderella teams to move forward to the Elite Eight position. It's kind of a personal little thing of pride that some of you know my grandson, Andrew, who's a graduate student here at Kent State in sport management. He just accepted a new job to go to work in the athletic department at Texas Tech. Very proud of what he's doing. So a little love over facts here, moving Texas Tech forward. Arkansas will beat Colgate, and Virginia Tech will not, and Florida will beat Virginia Tech. Ohio State will also move forward. Okay, we go to the next region, which is the East. Michigan will move forward. Michigan is a question mark with their star player, Rivers, hurt, but I think they will move forward. Watch St. Bonaventure. I think St. Bonaventure could knock off LSU. That would be an upset. Georgetown, I picked them as a Cinderella favorite. Patrick Ewing, the Big East, Madison Square Garden. I think they will beat Colorado. And Florida State will win and move forward. And Michigan State in the play-in game will beat UCLA and then have the opportunity to play BYU where they will lose. Texas will move forward. Maryland, I have Maryland as an upset over UConn. That's going to be a tough game, but I like the way Maryland plays. They play solid. They play very strong defense, and I think they will move forward. And Alabama will beat Rick Pitino's team from Iona. Midwest, Illinois will move forward. Loyola of Chicago, I will beat Georgia Tech. Tennessee will move forward. Oklahoma State will move forward. Oklahoma State have the best player in the country in Cunningham. And San Diego State will beat Syracuse. Sorry, Jim, you're over 70. I'd like to have you win, but San Diego will beat you. And then West Virginia over Morehead State, and Clemson over Rutgers, Houston over Cleveland State. That would be an upset. Cleveland State is a very good team. They could win that game, but I don't think they're quite ready to do that. So we'll get into the next phase here in the what I call the Elite Eight. Gonzaga, Iowa, Creighton, USC. Iowa have an outstanding player in Garza. They could make it to the Elite Eight. Baylor, Ohio State, Texas Tech, Arkansas, Midwest, Illinois, Houston, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Midwest. And in the East, Michigan, Alabama, Florida State, and Texas. And that, where do we go now? To the what I would call the Final Four, where we have them in color. And I would say this might be the year for Gonzaga. They can score. They've got Jalen Suggs, Drew Tim. They score 92 points a game. And also you look at the Big Ten, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio State. They could return to Indianapolis in the Final Four. But when you look at them, I think Baylor will, Ohio State will, I feel, will knock off Baylor. And then you get into the Big Ten. That when you look at Illinois, they are a strong team. They got Kofi Cockburn. They got Oya Dosunuma, outstanding players. They play the game the right way. And that gets us to the point where Florida State is my pick to come into the Final Four from that line. Florida State, at one point, a month ago, I had them picked to be maybe national champion. They're an excellent team. They will be ready for the tournament, and I think they will knock off Michigan and Alabama, the other two strong teams in that region, just because I don't think Michigan's going to be at 100%. Alabama, you all remember the Buffalo coach, Nate Oates. This second year, he's done a great job with that one. So my tournament champion, Final Four, Gonzaga, Florida State, Ohio State, and Illinois. I picked Illinois and Gonzaga in the championship game, and Illinois is the national champion. On the women's side, Stanford is the #1 team in the country. UConn is an excellent team. They will be a competitor. UConn's coach has tested positive for COVID, so that might be a difference. South Carolina, Texas A&M, Baylor, North Carolina. Iowa State is coached by a former MAC coach in Fennel. He was at Toledo, and I like to follow former MAC coaches. Where are they going now? He has a good team at Iowa State. I don't think he'll win the championship, but they should advance well. And I like Maryland. Maryland, Brenda Fries is the coach of Maryland. She always has a great team. I like Brenda. She was on our staff here at Kent State with Bob Lindsay, moved on in her career, head coach at Ball State, then to Maryland. And I think that Maryland is the highest scoring women's team in the country. And I think this is their year to put it forth. All right, so that is where, in my opinion, where we are with the men's and the women's test. And then as we look at where do we go from here, we then call on Todd to give us the weather report.
Yes, thank you. Well, of course, this year there was no other way to pick these than to think about teams that have natural disasters as names. So when I looked through all these as I was picking my United Way bracket this year, Bill, for both the men's and the women's teams, there's only one team of this entire list. And this is not just Division I, this is also Division II and NAIA and others. So there were more than 900 colleges that I looked to find out their nicknames. And the only one that has a team in an NCAA tournament right now happens to be the women's Iowa State Cyclones. So I'm going to go ahead, and Laing even picked them as one of the top women's teams with a former MAC coach. My tip of the day, go with the Iowa State Cyclones and cross your fingers for everybody else that Laing picked. And fill out those United Way brackets. Make sure to give them support and love. Not only do they have brackets, they also have squares. So there's multiple opportunities and ways to participate, considering that Rotary is not doing it this year. But look for it next year.
Thanks, Todd.
My parting tip is pick your Final Fours from the top 3 lines.
Great. Thank you, Laing. As you know, in this club, we have a tradition of having a responder to our program. And today's responder is Kurt Stump. Kurt.
Thanks, Kathy. Laing, as always, thank you so much for just a really fun-filled, educational presentation. Really entertaining and just a change of pace from what we typically have people talk about. So thank you so much. Just quick interjection of a personal note. You know, it has been such a strange year for all sports. I'm actually an assistant basketball coach for my son's 6th grade basketball team, and he got to play his last game on Sunday, this past Sunday, at LeBron James Arena. And they didn't have a great season. We had some unusual things that got canceled and people that couldn't be there, but we were able to play at a really neat place. They ended up winning the game, and all the parents at the end said, "We're so glad we had a season." And really, that's such a sentiment, I think, for so many sports right now is that people are just appreciative to see games being played. So I appreciate your take on, you know, all the aspects that have occurred this year and the things that have made the NCAA tournament kind of unusual. Not seeing those big blues in there, Duke not playing. The fact that you said UNC is going to be upset, I didn't like that comment very much, but I guess I got to let you have your knowledge. We'll see. I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to watching some of the tournament, and I think more than anything, we really look forward to seeing you next year in person at a Rotary meeting and hearing more of how Todd didn't pass his PhD dissertation because he was too focused on finding teams with natural disasters in their name.
Don't say that. Don't say it. I can use all the good juju I can get. Okay.
So we'll look forward to seeing you next year in person, and hopefully that'll happen, and we'll have a chance to do this literacy contest again next year. So thank you so much, Laing, and looking forward to the tournament.
Okay.
Thank you, Curtis.
Kurt. Thank you, Laing. It was great. So with that,